Yeah.
All right. 1-2 from the top. Really happy to have Mr. James from the Smokeface Grillahs with me today. And this is the second installment of the Smokeface Griller interviews. So welcome, James. Good to have you along.
Thanks, mate.
Now,
Good to see you.
guys, if you've ever been at a comp and you had to sleep in the same bed as someone, so you piled in, and then in the middle of the night you wake up and you're pinned against the wall, go ahead and hit that like button and let us know in the comments. I went to the American Royal with the Smokeface Grillahs, and their accommodation was a 3-bed camper van that slept 4, and by the 4th person they meant me and Jai in the same bed, and she was only I think it was a double. It certainly wasn't a queen. Anyway, I woke up and I was pinned against that wall. He likes to sleep and take a lot of room. We'll just let people imagine what it's like to be pinned against a wall with Jai snoring. Actually, he would say I snored, but never mind. So, James, how's things going, mate? How's the scene over in Australia right now? Pretty dead, I imagine.
Yeah, it's a bit of a weird feeling, I guess. Everyone's, I guess, trying to figure out what they're doing in terms of work first, and they get the priorities and family. But as far as the scene's concerned, things are starting, I think, to ramp up in other states other than Victoria, which is where we're based. And we're having some issues around different states letting Victorians into other states. So we're a little bit kind of left high and dry in terms of when we can compete next and where we can compete. So
I mean, I've got to be honest, I wouldn't let you into my state if I...
Yeah, what can I say? I mean, we've got some people who are doing the wrong thing, I guess, and I think majority of people are doing the right thing. But whilst we've got a few people not doing the right thing, we can't go anywhere. So it's pretty much locked down at this point, and I think it brings out an opportunity for us to try some other things, to be cooking at home, to cook some other things other than competition food, and lets us explore different options now that we've got a bit more time. So it kind of does bring its blessings at the same time.
So when was your actual last comp?
We were all locked up, ready to go for Meat Stock Melbourne, and that was the day that we found out really that COVID was quite serious, and that it could have a knock-on effect on a larger scale other than just competitions. And we were bumped in, ready to go, and we found out that evening that it wasn't going to go ahead. And I think that was probably a certain moment in time where you'd say, okay, this is bigger than just a common cold type thing, and it's going to affect a lot of different people in a lot of different ways. So that was probably going to be our last one. I think prior to that we'd done one here in Melbourne in Geelong. We had a great cook. Just didn't transpire through the numbers, but that was probably our last one.
Right. Okay. Well, that's a bit. Yeah. I mean, I guess you guys are probably like me, just frothing to cook anything right now. I mean, we had a bit of a belly beatdown amongst the Waikato pitmasters, and we had Brendan come up from Napier, and he's running hot because he won Meat Stock, and then he comes and beats us all at belly. So. It's but I was just telling my teammate Grant the other day that we'd have a competition folding up foil if anyone was keen. We're just so desperate to have a comp, but we've got one locked and loaded for August, the first weekend of August. So that's
great. Yeah, I think people are keen, but at the same time we have to get that right. But yeah, it's funny how teams have runs, isn't it? I think every team, once you kind of start getting up there and you start getting up and about, that you start having a few consecutive wins, and it tends to how it trend. That's how it trends for most teams.
I guess you find your rhythm, don't you? Maybe you can get into that during this episode. You can talk about your guys' rise, because I know it took several years to get going, and I'm not quite sure what point you came in. But where did barbecuing start for you, James?
I actually started. Where did I start? I think of course, everyone loves barbecue, I guess, in general. And so, even as a kid, I was really into barbecue. But the American scene is obviously a very different scene that we were not really accustomed to. Like, we're obviously aware of pork ribs, and without having gone to America, that's about as good as it gets. You kind of know that you can get it at your local butcher, and the scene is, I guess, not as big as our world now. But I was starting to get into it. I joined the ABA, Australasian Barbecue Alliance, on their website, and of course I've seen all these beautiful American cooks and all of these things that were really inspiring me to want to get into it, and I wanted to know more. So I did a lot of research, and I think the first cooker I picked up was a Weber Smoky Mountain, just a little 37 centimeter, so you can only, barely fit sort of half a brisket on it and a few bits and pieces. And I just started getting it into from there. I just started talking to some people. I think Tony from the Beard and the Barbecue was my first, my first professional barbecuer that I kind of tapped into. And his advice was, you should be a judge first and really get to understand the scene and what it's all about, and what people are serving. And so I did exactly that. I joined up for the first competition that I could as a judge.
So when approximately when did the
was probably
WCM, when was that purchased approximately?
it was probably about 3.5 years ago.
Right.
Yeah.
And was that your first charcoal barbecue, the WCM?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, first one.
And were you cooking on a gasser up until then?
Up until then, no, I was just, I guess I wasn't really, it was gasser. So, and it wasn't even the American barbecue that we know. It was just the regular Australian things that we would always cook. Grilling, yeah.
Sausages and lamb chops.
That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I think everyone's, look, I mean, anyone who, I know guys like to be purist, and look, there was a bit of a funny thing happening in New Zealand comp scene at one point where they would get you while you're asleep, and they would get you to hold a gas grilling book, and then they would take photos of you, and they would post pictures of their victims on the NZBA barbecue site.
Yeah,
and that was always a bit of fun. But I think everyone must have started on gas. I mean, gas was so popular all through the 90s and well into the 2000s. So it's only really just come of age now. But charcoal again. So did you grow up in a family that barbecued, or?
Not particularly. I think we did barbecue on, like, it was, I think it's just part of the Australian culture and the way of eating in summer. The barbecue comes out, and and there's 3 good months of the year in Melbourne where you can enjoy barbecue. So you're kind of out there and getting as much grilling done as you can, and then other than that, you kind of locked away for the most part. We're not as blessed as some of the more northern states. So.
I mean, your weather there, from what I can tell, is a lot like New Zealand's. Well, at least where I am in the Waikato, we must be on the same parallel or something, because, I mean, it's very, very similar. But, I mean, we get more than 3 months. We probably get about, we might push it out to 6 months. But, I mean, obviously I barbecue all year, but, I mean, it's pissing down with the rain outside, and I'll be barbecuing later tonight. So, it's all good.
Yeah.
The average person probably doesn't battle through the weather like that.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, we it's pretty much summer and then it's winter here, so we don't get much. But yeah, I think I kind of did my homework on the smokers, and I'm like, okay, I really don't want to make the leap to an offset just yet. I'm not sure if I want to commit at that level. And then I guess doing a bit of homework on the internet, I kind of like, okay, well, a bullet smoker is a reasonable way to get in. You certainly could do a lot worse. And so for me, I just wanted something that wasn't going to take up too much time, that I didn't want to invest in too heavily, but at the same time could get the experience and figure out whether I liked it or not. So my girlfriend bought me that for my birthday. So that was my first real charcoal barbecue.
Now, did you direct her towards WSM, or did she?
100%. Yeah.
And why'd you go with WSM over ProQ or Finetto?
I think that just after doing my homework and being inspired from the American sites, the WSM was probably something that just came up more frequently in terms of recommendation. Of course, the two other barbecues are probably more Australian based, and I was getting a lot of my information at that time from American sites. So, and of course, we know whether really well in terms of the brand, and they're very
Yeah, for sure.
trusted brand around the world. So I think that's probably why I went that way.
It's yeah, I can understand that. I mean, obviously the WCM's been around a while and got a good brand, and I mean, you're just any Weber product's well known, you know.
Yeah.
And but I think I've talked to one of the other guys. I can't remember which interview, but we talked about the stackers. And would you agree with, obviously now that you've a bit more experience, would you agree that a barbecue that allows you to split the middle section would be better than the WSM?
As in adding sections, you mean?
Well, the WCM has just one
Right.
large section in the middle, and the Pro Q and the Finito and barbecues, they allow you to break it apart in the middle.
Yeah.
Do you think that's a good feature to have, or is it not too worried about it?
I mean, certainly it gives you options, and I think the more options you have, you know, the better that it can be. So yeah, even the 37 centimeter has just the one split. So you still have two shelves, but to kind of get to that second shelf is difficult. You kind of have to come in from the top or just a little trap door on the side. So if you can get another layer in there, then yeah, that would obviously be a good thing. I haven't had much experience. Obviously, I know the Pro Q and the Finetto, and I know a lot of people use them even in competition, and they do just as well. I think, you know, obviously, as long as you've got something that you know well and that you're experienced on, then you're kind of halfway there. You know, you need to understand the cooker that you're cooking on.
Oh, for sure. I mean, I remember watching one episode of Pitmasters, and the I can't remember even who it was, but the guy had bought his big what are those ones called with the letterbox, and they have the you know, the what are they? They're like the Southern Pride or Old Hickory or whatever.
Old Hickory,
they use a fan and a gas assist on them.
Mm-hmm.
And he bought that and had problems during Pitmasters, like got damaged in transport. So he just got an old, I think it was a gasser that he just gutted, and then put all the charcoal to one side and just make it work, you know. And he ended up winning. So I think you know, it's definitely not about the appliance as much as being comfortable with the appliance.
Yeah.
So I see you've got a Weber Premium in the back there. Do you still have your WCM?
No, I don't. I actually moved the WSM on only because it just came down to a matter of room, really. And if I had bought a larger WSM, I would have 100% kept it. I do have a bit of FOMO on the larger WSMs. I'd like to have one, but I think as you start going through your barbecue experience, you start going through different stages. And so I went from the WSM straight to a 20-inch Radar Hill. Which at that time was, you know, considered to, you know, be the best, and still is really in Australia, to be the best offset smoker you could get in terms of stick burner, and so I just went from that to, okay, I want a stick burner now. I'm loving this, and upgraded to a 20-inch Radar Hill and just flogged that for a good 2 years.
And have you still got the Radar?
Still got the Radar, but I probably I would like to give it a run, but it's just that balance in between. It probably holds more good memories for me, and there's something beautiful about a stick burner. But you know, as you progress and you get a bit more time poor, you start realizing that there's some other options. And I think just in the last few years, a lot of people have been going to smokers like the Gateways and the drum smokers and cooking at higher temperatures and getting your cook through a lot faster. So that's where I've kind of upgraded to a Gateway now.
So, but you've still got the Radar, right?
Still got the Radar.
Okay,
Probably haven't used it for a good 18 months, but.
So here's an interesting one for you, and obviously we'll try and be as objective as possible because I don't really want to pick favourites. But
yeah.
Why didn't you go with a Manhorn over a Radar, given that Manhorn was probably just up the road from you? Do you remember? Or?
Yeah, I do. I do. I specifically remember looking at the Radar Hill and looking at the Manhorn. And the Manhorns are, of course, as you say, they're here in Melbourne, in Victoria, and they were a bit closer. And the Radar Hill, of course, are up in Queensland, so you have to pay for it to get transported down. It's a fair way. It's a good 8 hours away. I think it just came down to the way it was designed over the charcoal box, which seems strange, but the radar hill came with an option at that time that Manhorn weren't doing, which was to, over the charcoal box, there's a hot plate and there's a grill grate there as well. And to me, that made sense in terms of flexibility to be able to cook directly over coals, either via the hot plate or the grills, as well as using it as an offset. So for me, that just kind of made a little bit more sense. And yeah, of course, the name preceded itself in terms of offset, and it was a lot of people through the ABA that were really backing Radar Hill at that time. So I think it was just those two main factors.
Fair enough. Yeah, that's fair enough. Those grill plates can be handy. Do you? So I'm just trying to think. Was your radar reverse flow? Because I know they
Reverse.
Yeah, I know they
Yeah.
mostly did reverse flows, didn't they?
They did mostly reverse flows. I think there was a time towards the end of Radar Hill where they did a couple of standard, but they were very particular about who they went to and how many they made.
I know Lucas takes great pride in knowing that he's got one
Yeah.
of the offsets, but
He's he's a
their
straight.
reverse flows are great. So I mean,
Yeah.
each their own, man.
It's just what I where I got my knowledge from using reverse flow. You know, I don't know any different. Of course, there's some purists who are really all about the standard flow, and I do understand that. But yeah, I think just reverse flow is what I'm used to, and it just made more sense to me when I was looking into it rather than playing around with baffle plates and things like that to then have to have the reverse. So for me, I thought it was good.
So now, so a couple of questions around that.
Yeah.
Well, just one comment. So when I first started building my first barbecue, which was 10 years ago, 11 years ago, reverse flow was, I mean, largely unknown.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember I was on some bulletin board, barbecue builders bulletin board, and you know, I just had a go at it because I figured, oh yeah, it seems to make sense. I think it's pretty cool how smoke, you know, goes through the maze, so to speak. So I built a reverse flow, and but what I noticed is in Texas and the US, as you know, there's not a lot of reverse flows over there. I mean, obviously there could be like 20% of them or something, but I mean, you go to like one of the big cook-offs, they're all literally all offsets. So it doesn't seem to have caught on as much over there.
You know, and it's I think they're in a different world. You know, they culturally, I think that's what, when they say barbecue, that's what they mean by barbecue. Whereas it's not, I guess, what barbecue is synonymous with here in Australia just yet. We more think gas. Yeah, it's interesting. Obviously, everyone knows that we're in America last year, and their standard offsets tend to, for the most part, have the one draw as opposed to two. And I think, and then once I started seeing that, I go, okay, now I kind of understand the philosophy of a standard offset. Whereas the double draw with the second component sort of going around the bottom, hitting the side, coming up the top and back up and reversing again, meant that you got a more even cook across the two areas. So
I
I don't
guess
know.
Moberg, which there's a lot of guys copying his pits right now, and apparently he copied someone else's, and naturally, I mean, I don't really care, but
Yeah.
I saw Big Mo's Simtex pit, which is a badass looking pit, and those guys have tried to put a lot of thought into designing a barbecue that was more better, and they put a whole bunch of bearings and whatnot into it. But anyway, they've got two shells, and the Mobergs have two shells, and they're all cross flow, you know, straight through.
Yeah.
So I guess, yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's hard to know. I mean, I've always just, I mean, I've cooked on both, and you know, I think there's a lot of BS too. Like people think, oh yeah, I'm cooking this way, so that makes me a winner. You know, it's like, well,
Yeah.
and then everyone's cooking direct on drums now, and you know, like it's like I don't know. The longer I go and the more appliances I own, the less important the appliances, and the more just hey.
Yeah. I totally agree. I think if you understand the philosophy behind, I guess, where your heat's coming from and stack it accordingly. The rest kind of it doesn't matter. It's like if you're on a direct offset, then of course it's going to come directly from where the heat source is. And if you reverse offset, then it's kind of the top left-hand corner, which is generally the hottest, where it kind of swings up and comes up the top and starts coming back again. So, you know, you're
It's
right.
know
There's
your
no
barbecue,
secrets.
right?
Right.
Yeah, no, that's cool. The other thing is, would you? So, I mean, if I stole your radar and you got the chance to buy another one, would you order
Yeah.
this flow, or would you just go give me a standard one? Or
If you probably asked me prior to me going to America, I'd still go. Like, I'd be devastated because I love my radar heel in general, but I'd probably be still reverse flow because that's my world. That's what I know. But now, having gone to America and seeing how, seeing that that's more the way they do things, and seeing the brick pits in the really old places, I kind of would go more in that direction.
oh yeah, well that's cool.
Towards more of a standard.
Yeah, I guess for me, I really don't know. I don't really care, to be honest. Just give me a barbecue, I'll
You
use
just
it.
want barbecue, yeah.
Yeah, I just yeah. I mean, it's hard to know. You know, they both have shortcomings and they both have upsides. So I don't. It doesn't really matter to me. I guess if I had to choose one, well, I guess on a shorter barbecue, I would go reverse flow. On a longer one, I'd go offset. There you go.
Yeah, yeah.
So you've still got that barbecue today, and you still cook
Yeah.
on it every now and then, and
Still, yeah. I mean, you have to want to enjoy the experience of a when you're cooking that way. It's more about the journey to get there to the final product as it is about the final product itself. I probably more enjoy the experience of getting to that point. I mean, and you even get to a point where you're not even you want to taste it and you want to go, okay, how good is it, but really it's about just enjoying that time, cooking it and getting a whole lot of other things right along the way. And of course, people come over and you cook for them and you blow their socks off if they've never had barbecue before, but you're like, oh yeah, it's pretty good, but you're your own worst critic and you start picking it real quick. And so for me it's just about more the experience of barbecuing, not the final product, if that makes sense.
yeah. Well, I guess, and I'm probably with you. I guess the more you cook, and I mean, the more you do it, I guess the more comp barbecue you cook, the less you enjoy cooking at home because you're just like, well, I'm doing it. I mean, you guys are competing all the time, and you're not that, when you're at home. I mean, I can't even remember the last time I cooked a brisket at home. It must be, I mean, it'd be over years ago. But then I had my supplier look up how many. I had my supplier look up how many briskets I've cooked, and it's over 2,000.
Yeah.
Cooked. So,
Yeah,
when you're kind of knocking out those kind of numbers, you get a bit over it. And
yeah.
I still love barbecuing. Don't get me wrong. I don't want to sound like a pessimist, but my family say, "Hey, can we have brisket?" I actually don't even think my family's asked for brisket for a long time. So, actually, the last time I cooked a brisket was over summer, where we shut the restaurant and I was camping and cooked a brisket just on the bullet for a bit of fun.
Yeah.
I think I had one slice of it, and then
yeah.
else,
You just take the center part, and you're like, oh, yep, and straight away. But I think cooking at home is very different to how I cook in competition as well.
Oh yeah.
So,
Yeah. I mean, it is very different, and when you're competing, you've got to balance sleep and all the rest of it. Whereas, and I think the other thing that when you're cooking at home, and this might be part of the problem, is that you're like, hey, come over for a barbecue. But I mean, the only guys that are coming over to my place for a barbecue are my teammates and guys I compete against. So it's like self-defeating. You're not going to cook a brisket for them, are you? So,
yeah.
and then my mates who don't eat brisket regularly, I'm not like I'll give them just whatever, pork chops or something. I want to cook something that I like cooking, or something that's more attention, can hold my attention. But that's interesting. So besides your Weber in the back, I see you got a Weber Premium, you've got a Gateway, you've got the radar. What else you got hiding away back there?
I've got a little Go Anywhere Weber, which hasn't actually got a run since I bought it, but
is it brand new still?
I bought it secondhand. There's
Shame
something
on you.
I know. There's something good about the hunt though. Like I enjoy flipping Webers as well. So, kind of doing them up a little bit and then passing them on to someone else. It's the thrill of the chase. And then they got really expensive here in Australia secondhand, and just like ridiculous, crazy expensive.
Do you go
So
around, drive around on hard rubbish day and try and find
no,
a Weber?
I'm not that full on. I just keep an eye on Facebook and the marketplace, or someone who might be posting it on a local area. And a lot of people don't understand that there's even a market as brutal as it is. They don't understand that there's a huge market for it. You often see the more rare ones kind of come up, and they come up for $30 or $40. They get like 100 inquiries, and then they realize, oh, hang on, there's some money in this, and then they come up 10 minutes later, and they're like triple the price.
So do you I've never really understood it. So what's the attraction on the old ones? Is it just the history behind it, or
yeah, I think
were they different in any way to the new ones besides the wooden handles, or?
No, not really. I think there's a little bit of people kind of want something that they probably grew up with in terms of age. So a lot of people who are going for Webers, they either want the one that came out in their birth year date. So if you're born in 1980, they want a 1980 Weber. So there's a lot of people who
So
are like,
how is it different from the one behind you though?
they're technically they're built the same. It's more about having, okay, I was born in 1980, so I have a 1980 Weber. So there's some people who go down that path. Obviously the newer ones don't come with the wooden handles, so I think that's part of the process. They want something that looks like they did when they were a kid growing up. And then of course there's colors that come into it as well. So the black ones are probably the most popular ones, and then of course the ones that are colored weren't as popular back in the day. So then people inevitably end up collecting those a little bit more. So the red ones, green ones, the blue ones are really popular.
So
And
what's the most rare color then that you're aware of? Maybe I
probably.
should get one of the Weber. Maybe I should get Golly on to talk about Webers.
Yeah, you should. I think he's probably the man, to be honest. But I think I haven't seen many of those canary yellow ones, the ones that are probably more late 70s. I've never seen one for sale. Obviously, I've seen a few photos, but I've never seen one come up. But I don't know. The bottle green ones are nice. The blue ones are really popular, but I enjoy the green or the red. But yeah,
I
I've
just
passed.
actually found. Well, I've been talking to Tuffy, and he got recently got a. He's I don't know if it's a sponsorship or whatever you call it. He's basically working with Weber. Let's put it that way. And part of
Yeah.
the thing that Weber do when they get someone new that they're working with, they do a custom color for them.
Mm-hmm.
So if you go on Tuffy's feed, he's got it's like a Smurf blue kind of color, and
Yeah.
it's a
Right.
custom mix he's the only one in the world with one that color,
Yeah.
which
Right.
is pretty sweet.
Yeah, I saw him posting a few things on Weber the other day. I think it was more. He's got a good collection too, by the way. But
He does, eh?
yeah, I was quite
Probably 10 of
surprised.
the damn things.
At least. Yeah.
So I wonder if, again, I might talk to Golly, but I wonder if he's shown much interest at Meat Stock, because the Weber Kettle Club guys always put a lot of effort into their site, which is
Yeah.
totally cool. I mean, it's really become a hallmark of Meat Stock Sydney to have them there. And
100%. And I think everyone has different philosophies when it comes to competition barbecue, and I think ours, to some degree, aligns to the way that Weber Kettle Club do theirs as well, because they're there for the experience first, and if something comes their way in terms of a call up, then that's just a bonus. And we like that style as well. We're there for the camaraderie and for the experience, and certainly we want to win as well. That's part of the reason why we're there, but it's not to the detriment of everything else.
I mean,
So
you definitely have a reputation as being the Smokeface Grillahs, that is, of being one
yeah.
of the party teams, right? And
Hmm.
get
Yeah.
trashed on the Friday or Saturday or
Yeah.
both. And
Well, I know Jai and Justin definitely wear that badge of honor.
yeah,
100%.
I know
And
you're a bit more tame for a range of reasons that we won't go
yeah,
into, but
yeah,
I know you always get hit with the early shift.
the early shift, which it doesn't bother me that much. And is interesting because at that same first competition that I went to judge, that's where I first met the team in Smokeface Grillahs, and I just thought it would be a nice thing to do, to go up to each one of those teams on that day and say, hey, listen, thanks for cooking. I was one of the judges and really enjoyed all the food that you guys pumped out, and started having a chat to the teams that were there. It was back in the day when there was a cider festival here at Flemington Racecourse. And anyway, that was one of the teams that I met, and I was saying to the guys, how do you kind of get into this competition thing? And he's like, oh, your best thing to do is to join an already established team if you don't want to start at the start. And actually, Smokeface Grillahs are potentially looking for a team member. You should go speak to them. So this was after the competition had finished, and
So wait on. So who were you talking to? Who gave you that advice?
Oh, I think just one of the other
judges or whatever.
No, just one of the other teams that I was speaking to and thinking down the line. And I got about halfway down, and they were like,
"Now, at that particular point, was it just Juzzy and Jai, or was there the third? Because there was a third guy that I've never met."
Yeah, there was Blake, and he he's got a big family, and he was probably there more as a pair of hands, and obviously enjoyed the experience. But I think you'll find that most people in barbecue really want to get hands on, and they really want to be part of the process through beginning to end. And I think he was just more there for the mateship, and it was kind of at a time where they were at a pivotal point, that team, and they had a lot of they had a lot of skill and obviously got a lot of experience, but just I guess sort of needed something to anchor it all down, and I guess that's where we really complement each other in that sense, because as you say, they're huge. We're a massive party team, and I enjoy party as well, but I also enjoy my sleep. And
yeah, there's party and then
enjoy,
there's Jai and Juzzy. I mean, that's like
man,
freaking.
Yeah, and in different ways, I've partied more than the rest of them, I can tell you. So I've been there and done that plenty in different ways. But when it comes to barbecue, although I enjoy that experience as well, I also on game day want to give us the best possible chance, and I kind of want to be able to fill the gaps. So that's where we complement each other as a team.
You're definitely the responsible one in the group.
Yeah.
And I mean, I guess I met you guys at the Invitational, and I guess your first cook in New Zealand, was it the Long Room or was it the Big Boys Toys?
It was Big Boys.
Yeah, okay. And you guys come over, the three of you guys, and I guess geez, I'm trying to remember your fourth guy's name.
Chris.
Yeah, Chris. Sorry, I was thinking Shane, but I knew it wasn't right. And Chris, he didn't come for whatever reason, and you guys come over, and I mean, what? That's right. It was a bit of a points chase, and obviously you GC'd that. And what I observed with you guys' late start and everything was, I mean, you were definitely the responsible one in the group, and I still hold that even after cooking with you guys and and everything. I mean, how you put up with those two is just remarkable. So I mean, so when did you join their team officially?
Yeah, so that was my first. So Jai basically said, "Listen, we've got a competition coming up in a few weeks here again. Come join us. We'll give you a run, and we can't promise anything, but we'll kind of see what's up." And so I came down for the cook, and I was there nice and early, and took it very seriously, and it was probably a huge eye opener for me, because there was a lot going on that I didn't even fathom. Like, it was just such a massive learning curve. I had some experience obviously cooking at home on the WSM, and I think I'd had my radar for a little bit by then, 3 or 6 months, but I certainly didn't know what they knew, and I was, I guess, more there as a second set of hands to try to fill some of the gaps so they could more focus on the cook, which has obviously changed somewhat over the years. But for me, I just blew in my mind the kind of things they were doing and the kind of conversations they were having, and how to rebound from something not going the way they wanted it to. And so I went through the first cook.
Approximately when, like, what year was this? Or I mean, how long have you been with the guys?
It was probably this will be my 4th year with them. So
Jeez.
It was So it was probably about 3 and a bit years ago. It was at the start of the season. It was somewhere in February.
So was this kind of before they become a top tier team? It was on the way up.
Yeah, they had. I think they got a few trophies here and there, but there's a tipping point probably about a year and a half later, where we started and I think it was probably Meatstock Melbourne where we got a good run and we started getting some consistency. And we were known as a team that were always consistent, but could never really break through beyond that, that top 10.
Yeah, I've thought about that a lot, and I don't really understand. I don't really get, like,
I know what you're
what
going
I'm
to say.
saying is that you have teams, for
Yeah.
example, that always come in the top, say,
Mm-hmm.
maybe they're just between the top 10 and top 5.
Mm-hmm.
Always there.
Yep.
But just for whatever reason, just can't get that extra little bit of horsepower out.
Yeah.
But,
It's
as someone who's worked with you guys and
mm-hmm.
teams, I've cooked with a lot of teams, and I'm beside myself to actually put my finger on what it is that takes you from here to here.
Well, yeah. At that time,
At some point, you break through something, and boom,
yeah.
you've got it. And
Well, we didn't really know either, and that's kind of half the problem, is that if you're mega consistent in terms of top 10, it means your technique's probably pretty good. They're probably more when you're in the top 10, it's more the 3%ers. You've got 97% of what you need. There's that extra 3% that you need in order to get there, and a lot of it just comes down to technique, and then the consistency across all of your categories obviously is something else that will get you there too.
yeah, I mean, Tuffy says it's all with how, one of his sayings is, it's all with how you deal with catastrophe. And for
Mm-hmm.
sure, I believe, to some extent, if you don't have catastrophe during your cooks, maybe you're not pushing yourself hard enough or to the edge enough.
Right.
So if you're having these safe cooks where they're just, everything's perfect all the time, you're probably not pushing the edge of the envelope enough to actually break into that top 3, or if you like, or whatever, or your top teams. And then the teams that are doing that, they are pushing the envelope. Being able to recover from catastrophic failure is a massive part of. I don't know. I'm just trying to break this down, and maybe I should have refined my thoughts before I did it. But there seems to be a band of teams that operate in the middle who are like relatively safe, right? And they do well, and they have a good time and all that. And maybe they're pretty happy with what they do, and blah blah blah. But then there's a group of guys that are just like really pushing hard all the time to really refine it to its absolute 10th of a degree, right?
Yeah.
And they come either above that band, or they screw up and they come below.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's the party hardy guys who are just like completely down the, maybe they're in the top last 10% or whatever, and they just have a good time. They're not concerned with where they come, but they just have a bloody good time, etc.
Yeah.
So I guess what I'm saying is, for the teams who are in that middle band, if you feel like you're stuck in a rut, would you agree with me that maybe you're not pushing things hard enough where you're going to failure, like risking, the breaking point?
100%. So yeah, your rebound game definitely has to be strong. That's number one. There's been many times where we've missed something, or we're not all on point. Something gets missed, and then you have to recover from that. And it's those decisions that you make in a split second that could be the defining difference between getting a call up or not. And sometimes people struggle to make those decisive decisions right in that moment where the stress is upon you and that you have to get that box in within the next 2 or 3 minutes. And just one turn either way can then mean the difference between getting a call up or not. But yeah, I think it's really easy to play in that safe space where, potentially, and it's funny because you go to America and they'll tell you that that's what wins competitions, is being non-offensive in terms of flavor and trying to hit somewhere in that center. But I think you need some depth of flavor within that, and that's, I think, where some people go, okay, if I'll just use one rub and one sauce, or maybe if they're getting adventurous, two rubs and one sauce, and they're missing some dimension or depth of flavor. And that's, I think, when you start building flavors and you understand the relationship between all of them, and then you can get your technique right. That's when something special kind of happens.
Yeah, I mean, it was an interesting experience, and maybe we can recall it when I came to the Royal with you guys. I remember you guys had just come back from like barbecue supplies or something, and
Yeah.
you had all these sauces, and obviously it's been a lot of time. They're refining a whole bunch of, hey, we'll try this and we'll try, and they have sample sauces, and it's great.
Yeah.
And I remember how excited you guys had come back to tell me about the sauce. Hey, we've got this badass sauce, which, to be fair, I've heard that at least 20 times from Jai. Like, I've got the badass, the next rub or whatever. And tried it and just thought, man, that is an amazing product. And then we just sat down for probably an hour and talked about what rub we'd pair it with, and just kept, what about this? And I remember I had my ideas about that, and Justin had his ideas, and we'd sort of all gone around in circles a few times. You remember that night at that Airbnb. And I remember at that point it clicked in my head that what I was going to cook, because I had a comp the following weekend when I got back. And I remember thinking, that sauce with this particular rub and this injection is what I want to cook.
Yeah.
And we come back and we nailed it at Napier, and we got a first place. And obviously I told you guys that everyone was wrapped. And like, one of the things that I truly appreciate as a barbecuer, competitive barbecuer, is like working with folks like yourselves and others. Man, I mean, just the brainstorming you can do when you work together just takes you to the next level. And definitely cooking next to you guys at a couple of comps, and then cooking with you guys at the Royal, and just being mates and stuff, and talking to people that have such a vast and deep knowledge of barbecue, it definitely has elevated what I'm cooking. I mean, I still don't know what your recipes are, and it's irrelevant, but I have got ideas, and we've bounced back. I remember we talked for, I don't know, a freaking couple of hours after our practice cook at the Royal, right?
Yeah.
But that's one thing that I've really admired about the Smokeface Grillahs, is that ability to just problem solve and work together.
Yeah, and I think that comes from a lot of places. I think there was a lot of swapping and changing prior. And it's not me specifically, but I think there was a time where there was a lot of switching and changing of sauces and rubs, and they were sometimes hitting and sometimes not, and it was a bit of a moving target for the team. They had just made the conscious choice before I came along, even, to go, okay, we're going to stick with these combinations and these sauces, and we're just going to do that for a full season. We're not going to change anything. The only thing that's going to be changing is the cook itself, and maybe technique, but certainly not flavor profiles. And then that kind of eliminated that one opportunity, that one thing. And I think that was a really good solid foundation for the team and for me in terms of learning. And you could start dialing in and refining somewhat based on those flavor profiles. And then that gave us the ability and opened up the opportunity to then start trialing other things in the next season. And once you understand the relationship between all of those factors, that's when you can start tinkering with things and playing with things and trialing different things. And I think that's when we started progressing as a team. But you have to be
seeing you guys work together is something to behold, and anybody who gets to cook next to you guys is like a just watch and learn sort of thing.
Yeah,
but you guys definitely have this sort of symphony of, and one of the things I was thinking about what to say about before this podcast, and I just have to say, James, that I massively respect your ability to just grind away in the background. And maybe you're not the most, when you think of Smokeface Grillahs, it's hard to think past Jai because he's such a big personality. So perhaps like the team captain, I don't even know who the team captain is with you guys, but whatever anyway. But what I'm saying is you're like the unsung hero of the Smokeface Grillahs in my view, because you're the guy that grinds away and does maybe the jobs that aren't as glamorous, but you've always been one of these people that take a lot of pride in doing the dishes or building a box or whatever. And I totally respect you for that.
Yeah, thanks, man. I think everyone has to understand their position and understand what's their position in terms of their position that they have to play. And I think, everyone has their own spot. And I think that some of the consistency that we got throughout the seasons was about understanding where each other's going to be well in advance, and getting some consistency around exactly what spot we're going to be where and who's doing what. I've seen a lot of teams that fail through just sheer lack of communication on the day or in that moment. And there's a lot of people assuming that someone's doing this or doing that, and so no one has a particular spot. It's just whoever happens to pick it up at the time and I think that's just flawed and just fraught with danger. So with us, I was joining an already really established team, and I needed to figure out where my niche was within that team and what they were missing. And then through that, I was then able to establish where my position was within that team. And I could figure out what they already had and then what they needed, and then kind of adjust where I fitted in with that team accordingly. So I think everyone needs to have their position, and we've got a very specific way of running things as well, and we just try to keep that technique the same every time.
Yeah, I mean, it's that's one thing that I love about your team mechanics. I remember when I first observed the Smokeface Grillahs cooking back then, must be 18 months ago, whatever, almost 2 years ago, and it was perplexing to me because you guys didn't really. You didn't really have, hey, James, do this, do that. You just kind of knew, he was doing that, you were doing this, Jai's doing this.
Yeah.
And it was really unsophisticated, but it was just a dance that just, it was just, there was so much synchronization between you guys that not a lot was said. And I just remember watching and just scratching my head going, man, these guys really have really a depth of precision that I've not seen in any other team. And just accepting that Juzzy's doing the chicken, not like squabbling over it or whatever. It's just like, hey, we're going to run the program. The program's well established, and everybody does their little bit, and we all come together to have a taste, and we,
Yeah, I mean, you kind of at some point you have to trust each other. So you can't be over across everything. Everyone has to have their, and we're open to criticism with each other as well for the benefit of the team and for that individual. So, as long as everyone trusts each other's intent in terms of trying to get a better product, then there should be no issues. But yeah, there's probably not a lot of communication on the day with us, because when I first started, you kind of needed to preempt what those next few moves are, and then kind of be a couple of steps ahead of each other. And that's where, when I was playing a game in the background to begin with, I was able to figure out what they needed before they were going to even ask for it. And then of course, in terms of flavor profiles and cooking, and of course lambs, the one thing that I pretty much have most of the control over, and Juzzy's chicken, and probably the brisket and the pork ribs and pork is that we share all commonalities on in terms of responsibilities. Then that's when things start opening up a little bit. But I kind of think you almost need to understand the mechanics of what happens in the background in order to get to that point.
Yeah, anyway, I remember, like I said, watching your team and thinking, man, that's what we need in our team. So kind of come back and just had a real think about the personalities I was working with at the time, Sefton and Jim, who were great, just absolutely phenomenal teammates, workhorses, and just committed and just excellent teammates. But probably I had to have an honest conversation with myself about where the team was going in its current form, and whether that was where I wanted to go. And we were doing okay. I mean, we had some success. We were really good at working together. But after seeing you guys, I thought, well, to go to that next level, you've really got to throw it all on the line. And I remember having a discussion with Jim, Tom, and Sefton, and just saying, look, and they were pretty happy with where they were, which is totally cool. And still love and respect those guys massively. But I guess had Grant and Shane and kind of said, hey guys, I want you guys to come up and cook next to Smokeface at the long room, and I want you to watch what these guys do, because that's how we're going to start running.
Yeah.
and it's made a world of difference. And I think probably has been one of the decisive differences for our team in terms of climbing up the ladder.
Yeah, I mean that's the beautiful thing about the way in which the competitions are run in New Zealand is that it's very different to Australia, and I think we all go through different ways of doing things. We've had teams over the years that really bunker down and put all the four walls up and very secret squirrels, and we've seen that progress over the years, and we don't see that as much anymore. Whereas inherently, the way that a lot of the competitions are run in New Zealand is that it's very much no walls, open, open camp. Everyone can speak to each other, and we actually found that really refreshing when we came over there. In Australia, it was, there's a lot of pressure, and there's a lot of different ways of doing things, and then when we come to New Zealand, and it's like, okay, no walls, everyone's mates, we all talk to each other, we all share each other, share tips and tricks with each other, and we actually really enjoyed ourselves. It was probably one of our we probably enjoyed that cook the most out of all of the cooks that we've had over the years, for that reason.
Yeah, I suspect. I mean, as things heat up, I suspect it becomes a bit more like what you guys are. I certainly hope we keep remaining friendlies, but you always have your natural divisions. I mean, whether you're whatever. I mean, it's whether it's geographical, whether it's guys from Hamilton or guys who cook on octo pits, and
And sometimes it's just
much as
personality.
you try and keep it friendly, there's always natural groups of associations that form.
Yeah, for sure.
Guys who cook on heat beads versus Kingsfords, or guys who cook hot and fast versus low and slow, or guys who show up early versus late. I mean, we have our little. I guess we have our group from Hamilton, which we carpool and we share trailers and whatnot. So naturally, we want to go next to each other because we share the same trailer coming up. But well, it's funny because the West Auckland boys seem to be forming their own little chap too, and good for them and whatever. And it's cool. It's cool.
Yeah, I mean that doesn't. I mean, I think it's an eventuality, and a lot of it's built on the time that you spend with someone, and whether you party with a certain team and you get close to them, and we've seen all that come and go here in Australia as well. But I think as if you can try to keep it as pure as you can and try to at least get on with as many people as you can, then that's, I think, for the benefit of the whole sport.
Yeah, I mean, I think part of the problem is it's competition and you're dealing with competitive people. I mean, I was just talking to one of my buddies this morning about how, because we're going to try and put together a sort of loosely described as a father-son comp, but we're going to brand it as a professional amateur comp, because naturally there's some people who don't have kids or don't want to cook with their kids or whatever. Yeah. But basically we want to cook with our children, and it's like, well, do we want to go down that competitive route with our kids? Because I mean, the guys that I cook with will have a comp to see who can fold foil the best, or see who can like flatten out the freaking cardboard box the best, or just like such a competitive group. Yeah. But in saying that, we support each other and cheer for each other, and we know we're just competing against ourselves. So I remember when Auckland meat stock just gone, I was clapping on the Saturday for whatever team, and my 7-year-old slapped my hands away. It's like, don't clap for them. So I was like, no, I had to explain to him, like, I'm genuinely happy for those guys to win, because like, as much as I'm against them, I'm more against myself than. Yeah. I think you know what you're capable of, and as long as you live up to your potential, I think you just leave it on the table. I mean, if you come 10th or 1st, I mean, you kind of know, right? I think even before you hand your box in and you've tasted it, you kind of know how you've done. There have been very seldom have we either got a call up or not got a call up and gone, oh, that I either don't feel. I'm so surprised. Yeah.
I'm so surprised that I got a call up or that I didn't get a call up. Like, you can pick pretty closely kind of where you got up to. The only time you're really going to get a surprise is if everyone's had a bad cook in that protein, and then sometimes it can be the worst, the best of a bad bunch. And that I've seen that play out once or twice, but that's very, it doesn't happen that often. Most people are going to bring their A game and bring a good cook. So for the most part, you go, yeah, not my best, and you start already reviewing, what you did differently, or did you change something?
It's funny because last couple of years ago it was like that. Oh man, those were great ribs, and you'd come like 8th or 10th or 15th or whatever. But definitely, as I've gotten better, my ability to say, yeah, that was a freaking good rib, and then you come second or whatever. I mean, yeah, man, that was freaking good.
Yeah.
So you definitely dial in, and you're less surprised for sure. The more better you're cooking and whatnot. Though there've been a couple of times where I've cooked briskets and thought, man, that was a freaking banging brisket, and then you come like 12th, and it's just like, wow.
It's funny because brisket's probably the only thing that we do get a bit of a surprise on. We can pick pretty close, with how we're gonna go on other proteins. Brisket's just one of the. It's a mixed bag sometimes. We've had what we thought were the best briskets, the most banging brisket, and kind of gone top third, but no call up. And damn, what else?
Well, I mean,
what
we
else do we
cooked
have to
that
do?
great food at the Royal and come like 117th, and I was just like, man, it's freaking tough out there, man.
Mm-hmm.
Like which was in the top. That was in the top 20%. So I mean, it was an incredibly good result and all that. But you're like thinking that's the best brisket I've ever cooked in my life, and it comes 117th. It's like, how disappointing.
Yeah, I know, but it's different. It's different over there. You're competing against 500 teams, and they're kind of and their philosophy is like, how many people can you not offend?
Yeah.
How can you be somewhere in the center there? Whereas when you've got a smaller group of teams coming together, whether it be a group of 20 or up to 60 teams, you're really about how can you stand out from the crowd. So it's a little bit depending on where you're playing, I guess. And a lot of teams will change the way they cook depending on where that is as well. We've always been of the philosophy that, okay, this is how our team cooks. This is what we know to be successful, regardless of what state we're in or where we're cooking, or whether it's somewhere in the bush or it's somewhere more central. We produce the same cook, and there's a lot of successful teams that will change their cook according to the ground and where they're playing. It's just not what we do, and sometimes
well, I mean, we're like you, just cook the same thing.
Yeah,
don't tweak it too much. I know some of the good cooks, Brad and Tim, and them, they'll cook drummies here and thighs there.
Yeah.
I don't know enough about our demographics to do that. I mean, barbecue's so new in our region.
I think it's still evolving, and even in Australia, we don't really have that. I think the only thing is that people will say sweeter tends to win more upstate in Queensland, and even then it's a bit hit and miss. But I don't know. We do really well in New South Wales, and that's where we hit the most. And Victoria's a bit hit and miss for us. We've had some good wins in Victoria as well, though. And then if you start going more regional, then you've got people who are local judges as well as experienced judges. And then where do you sit in relation to that? And will some of those really big, bold flavors offend some of those people who are really used to eating something it might be their first time
mashed
having
potatoes.
American barbecue, and roast down at the local pub. So and do you need to dial back then, to try to cater for them, or do you produce your same cook that you've always cooked? So it's a hard call to make.
It's anyone's guess. So, I mean, what influence, in your opinion? I mean, Melbourne's so saturated with barbecue, good barbecue businesses.
Yeah.
So, what impact has that had on Victorian barbecue competitions when you've got so many good barbecue, restaurants and retailers? How is that impacting the scene over there in terms of competition?
I don't know. I think it's more of an education piece than anything else. I think there's a lot of people who know what good barbecue is now, and we're lucky Melbourne's we're quite established in terms of the food industry, and had a lot of influences over the years. So we've had a lot of Italian and Greek influence, and we have a lot of good food here in Melbourne. So I think Melbourne's palate is refined enough. It's just about understanding what is good and what's not, and that's just where you've got to kind of try different places out. But we've got a lot of different barbecue places in Melbourne, and I think some of them do pretty good. And then some people who are not so educated on barbecue are just happy to be eating something different. And I think there's enough room for all of them. We're really lucky to have the Q Club in Melbourne, who of course do great barbecue. And they've got the added advantage of having the experience behind them, and they don't just do food. They do rubs and sauces, and they're very experienced on the circuit. And of course, their name speaks for themselves in terms of their team. And so that's kind of our go-to place. But I think there's enough room and enough people for all kinds of barbecue places in Melbourne.
So just on the Victorian barbecue subject, you guys seem to like your drama in Victoria. I mean, I know there is some drama in other states, but
right,
it seems like all the big squabbles and the what I'm talking about. Some of
a bit of peacocking.
Yeah, peacocking. That all seems to come out of Melbourne. Would you like to give me an idea as to why you think that might be? Without, obviously, I don't want to get into any specific squabbles, but
Right.
it just seems like every time there's any kind of controversy, it always seems to involve Victoria.
Yeah, I think
Something in the water, or
no, I think honestly, Victorian barbecue has changed a lot over the years, even in the last 2 years, where there's a lot of different teams now and a lot of different success within. So I think we've grown exponentially in terms of the amount of people that are just in barbecue, specifically in Victoria. So I think that's one. Obviously, different personalities and things come into it as well. Yeah, I mean, we try where we can to kind of steer clear. We think it gets in the way of gets in the way of the whole experience, and probably from an outsider looking in, that kind of showboating and those kind of arguments don't really benefit anybody. So it's easy to be caught up in drama, and yeah, I don't know. I just think we kind of evolve. You realize that you're not really hurting anyone but yourself if you continue going down that path. So I think you kind of at some point have to move away from it. And yeah, I don't know. I can't tell you why it's in Melbourne specific. And as you say, different people get on with different teams. But yeah, I can't say. I can't answer that one, unfortunately.
It's funny though, and I don't know. Maybe some of the New South Wales guys might disagree and say they're the queens of drama, but I always just roll my eyes at it because it just seems like. Look, I mean, any time you go through a competitive endeavour, you're going to have this kind of like jealousy and controversy and showboating and peacocking as part of it. I don't know that we've got a lot of it here. I suppose we've got a little bit, but and maybe it's just that we're just so young. We're just young players over here, and
yeah.
So, how did you find? How did you find competing in New Zealand? Like obviously, you guys got 2 GCs over here, and it's always it's become a sort of a life dream of mine to smash you guys at a comp. But how did you find the level of competence? The 2 cooks, I guess the 2 cooks you did were probably about 6 months apart. I mean, I'm sure you got asked to try every kind of barbecue that anyone cooked for feedback, including mine.
Yeah.
What would you say? Where's New Zealand relative to say where Melbourne is, or whatever?
I think that you guys have come a long way, probably especially in the last 12 months. I think there's been a lot of growth. I think prior to Big Boys Toys, it kind of reminded me of where barbecue was in Melbourne, maybe 12 months prior to that. And I think things happen progressively, and it seems as though that it kind of follows the trend for the most part. But yeah, I don't know. I think flavor profiles and depth of flavor is something that's really important, that you guys were starting to get on that journey with at that time of Big Boys Toys. And that was probably the one thing, and probably just limited. You're kind of limited as well. From my perspective, I think it's opened up a lot more, but it's a supply and demand thing, right? So you're only as good as the influences that you have around you. And if you can only buy a certain amount of rubs or sauces from a place, well, then that's kind of, unless you're importing from somewhere else, that's as good as it gets. So, but I don't know, I think we kind of felt we obviously felt a responsibility to come over and to really pick up what was the antithesis of barbecue for you guys, but then also share some love as well in terms of different products and ideas and concepts to try to help grow as well. So I think there was definitely you guys have some really good products there. Obviously you get all your Canadian ribs and things like that, and we just don't get that here in Australia. But I think flavor profiles was one thing that kind of stood out for me when I was there, and I think New Zealand barbecue was on a journey at that time to really understand some techniques that kind of set a few different teams apart. And there was definitely a thirst for knowledge when we got there. And then we saw it grow heaps when we came to the long room. The whole, it had grown so much in that short amount of time that we had been away in that 6 months. And I kind of never remember I never forget the Big Boys Toys where we got a phone call from you at 5 or 6 in the morning, and you're saying you realize
it wasn't like 5 or 6; it was like 7:30 or something.
Yeah, and we got this phone call. I think I was in the shower. I had about 10 missed calls from you.
I was like, where are these flaming guys?
I know. And then I finally called you back, and you go, dude, you realize there's a competition on today, don't you? I'm like, yeah, we're getting there, and of course that was at a time where we were had transitioned to hot and fast, and that just wasn't a thing yet. Nobody was really cooking at 300 Fahrenheit plus. But that had been a thing in Melbourne barbecue for a good 12 months or more. And now, I guess from the pages that I see and the way that I see you guys cook is that now a lot of people are heading more towards that way in terms of hot and fast. So things move quickly.
Yeah, I mean, it's a bit of a tough one. We cook on an offset and a drum.
Yeah.
So in some sense, you could say we've got both options available.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of hard to. We were just making that journey this year because, of course, we've been cooking on the Myron and had great success on her for a good 12 to 18 months, and we really wanted to run on the gateways, and we know that product really well, and we've cooked a lot on it, and we felt confident. But at the same time, you don't want to let go of something that to be successful. And this year we've started cooking. We only just started cooking on the gateways, and then of course the season kind of packed down, and that's been a learning curve for us as well, because there's things that you learn through cooking through a different medium, and so you have that growth through the team, and you sometimes screw a few things up along the way. But I don't know. I think the Myron obviously it's the H2O, and it obviously has all that water in it, and there's that safety net there, and she's obviously a beast of a thing, and we know her inside out, and it's just such a solid insulated product. And then you go to the gateway where you can fry things within 5 minutes if you turn your back for a second,
There's definitely less of a margin of error on an offset. But in saying that, I mean, you guys, it's a tough one, eh? It's a tough one. It'll be interesting to see how you guys trend in the next 12 months cooking on the gateways. I know you guys have moved on to basically 4 gateways, isn't it? So, I got to be honest, for where I am right now, absolutely no problem getting through 4 gateways if that's what we want to cook on. But I think we're going to stick with our combo that we've got a offset and a gateway. I think just having both options, direct cooker and indirect. They both yield very different results. We had a bit of a practice cook with lamb a few weeks ago, and there's a couple of concepts that I've been trying to get through past the team to start trying, and it's very hard to change something if you're doing really well. Like, hey guys, I really think that we could level up if we went and did this, but you're like, but we're already doing really well. Why would you want to? If it ain't broke, don't fix it. But I'm just like always pushing to try and like get the next, not the next big thing or anything like that, but just try to get something that just blows me away.
I mean, you definitely try to you want to try to stay ahead of the curve. So I understand what you're saying. For me, like lamb on a gateway is just like next level. there's just an extra depth of flavor there with the oil kind of coming down on the charcoal that and that crispiness that you just don't get, on another product.
So when you're cooking on your gateway, are you putting the foil dome in, or are you just leaving it open charcoal?
So we've got
Or do you do different ones for different proteins?
No, we tend to have the foil on a 45-degree angle, sloping away from the fire. But it depends what you're cooking as well. So of course, if you're cooking a whole brisket or two briskets, then some of it's going to hit the foil and some of it's not. Or if you just want to bank it underneath the foil, so no oil hits the brisket. Whereas if you're cooking something like for lamb racks, for example, that inherently doesn't have a lot of fat, you'll get a little bit that drops down and permeates some smoke, but certainly not as much as a bigger cut like a brisket, which you might be using a high marble score and it just maybe sets off too much oil on the charcoal, and that's where you have to start sloping it away and try to not put it over the charcoal. That's probably one of the first mistakes we made on the gateway in competition, is just not getting that set up right and just not positioning our proteins right first time around.
Yeah, one thing I noticed with the gateway is you've got to clean the thing after every cook pretty much. Otherwise, you just end up with grease build up and fat and flames and burnt smell. And I guess, we clean our offset regularly too before every cook. It's just a matter of practice. Picked it up from Tuffy. He's just always, start with a clean pit, like a brand new pit. He's like pressure washes everything out.
Yeah.
And definitely giving advice out. I'd definitely say for anyone who's struggling to hit those high notes, just start thinking about things like that.
Yeah,
the gateway's just like, the margin of error in the gateway is so slim that I really just feel like I cooked in my egg the other day, and the egg's even thinner than the gateway. At least the gateway you can cool down somewhat. The egg, once you get up to, like, I had my egg at 1,000 degrees Fahrenheit to cook some burgers, and I just couldn't cool it down. It took like an hour and a half to cool down. At least with the gateway, once you choke it down, it dies off pretty quick as well.
Really quick, yeah. That's the thing. So it's like if we forgot about our fire in the Myron, she's that insulated that you go, shit, there's no fire left, and and you can get her back up pretty quickly because she holds that thermal mass at a nice temperature. You kind of know when the dials start dropping, it's pretty much you've got no fire. Whereas you run out of fire in a gateway, we haven't got enough charcoal in there to begin with or something, and good luck trying to get that back.
Yeah, well, that's one of the beauties of drum cooking, and I don't want to keep saying gateway because I'm not like promoting Tim's drum. I do love my gateway and everything, but it's just vertical cooking, like direct cooking.
Yeah.
You don't have to keep messing with the fire because you've got enough fuel in that thing just to do the whole cook. In fact, I don't know if the gateway is more responsive than the big Finetto, but in our gateway, it's one chimney starter plus a few coals on top, and that's more than enough to do the whole cook and a little bit more the next day, sort of thing. So
yeah, for sure, you definitely get
super efficient.
Very efficient, very efficient. So but I think that's the way we're heading. And it's not to say that the Myron won't come back at some point, but anyone who knows the Myron, she's a beast, and she weighs 460 kilos. So first off, you've got to get it on and off the trailer. You've obviously got the expense that comes with hauling around something that's quite heavy, and she's reliant on having a water source as well. So there's all those extra things that come with it, and then we've had our experiences of not being close to water or something, or the water's not pumping through, and and it's not right. And so with these tools come extra issues. So it's
well, with our team cooking on the gravity fed that you guys used at the long room, if that fan breaks, we're stuffed. There is no way to cook on it without the fan. So we always bring redundancy in terms of fans, because any electronics, you're going to have problems with them sooner or later, right? And actually, to be honest, I've been using. We were making our own custom PIDs to do it, but since going onto the fireboard, the thing's just been rock solid. I think the last comp we didn't even bring a redundant fan, but we will continue to do that. In fact, I must talk to Derek about buying another loom for mine, because I've got 2 fireboards that I take to comps, because obviously if one has a failure, we're stuffed, like completely stuffed,
Yeah.
and we don't even have enough room to cook on, just like the gateway or whatever. So there is some risk there, but there's some huge benefits to being able to just hit a temperature and walk away from it.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's that's the one thing we noticed with the 4 gateways is that you pretty much need a man on them full time.
Man on duty, yeah.
Man on duty, and it's really reliant on the weather as well, because we got some really bad weather in Geelong and it was whipping down a gale, and of course that then changes what's going on with the gateways, and they were really hard to control with that wind coming through. So we actually had to move them to a point where they weren't getting affected by the wind. Whereas it doesn't, I mean, you could put the Myron in a storm, you could put her in beautiful 40-degree weather, it wouldn't make a lick of difference, for her really. So yeah, each cook, comes with their benefits.
Yeah, so I definitely think for the guys at home listening, if you're like a team with one person, then you best not be using gateways. And if you're a team with 6 people, or 4 or 5 or whatever, then why not? I mean, it's one of those things. I've actually, it's going to be interesting to see your guys' journey on that and see if, I mean, last season you finished up, was it 2nd or 3rd?
Yeah.
And then the season before 2nd.
Yeah. So yeah, 2nd the season
so you've
before.
had 2 phenomenal seasons back to back, and
yeah.
I mean, there's obviously a risk that you can only go down from here. So, I mean, I wish you guys luck and everything, but it's a big move to change your appliance like that.
Yeah.
And I mean, obviously it could take you to number 1, but it also could tank you down to number 10 or whatever.
Yeah, and I think we're willing to kind of take the risk a little bit in terms of potentially it costing us half a season or the full season if it's half a season, and we're okay with that. It's just the portability thing. They take up very little space, and anyone who's been in our trailer, the Myron takes up a good half of that space when we're on the road. So we kind of have to deal with that, and whereas the gateway is just a small footprint, and they're really light and easy to transport. So it just depends where you want to take the hit, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, for sure. Each their own, eh? It's funny here in New Zealand. I mean, we cook on a gateway, and we've been doing that for. I think I picked that up off Luke. I don't know, some point.
I think it was just after the long room.
Yeah. And just, ended up taking it to a comp because my Finetto had a problem with it.
Mm-hmm.
We were using our Finetto for lamb, so I was like, hey, we're going to take the gateway for chicken and lamb and that. And, I mean, the one thing I do like about the gateway is it's got a big area in there. It's got a good amount of room. Whereas my Finetto is only an 18-inch here, and she's a bit tight at times.
Mm.
But it's a good cooking surface. But it does take a lot of it's like cooking with a 2-year-old. You got to be constantly watching.
Right. Yeah, I definitely wouldn't recommend anyone who's just trying to get into cooking to begin with, or someone who's not got a depth of experience to straight away go to a gateway. You really only need to understand the principles of barbecue to kind of get her just right. You probably get pretty frustrated pretty quickly if that was your first kind of barbecue, but obviously, knowing what we know and trying different products, it means that we can kind of get the best out of her, knowing that all of the other things we've kind of got right in terms of flavors, in terms of technique, and this is just that different element for us now in terms of our journey. So. But yeah, you definitely need to, understand it, how it all works in order to get to that point. And
yeah, that's cool.
You'll see it happen as well. Like, I don't know if you guys have got into pellet smokers, or pellet smokers are even a thing in New Zealand. Do you guys run pellet smokers over there?
Dan, there's a couple of teams using them. They've still got that stigma about being a girl's appliance or whatever, which I just find to be a bit childish. But
yeah,
Dan came over and he's a big pellet grill man, and he's he kicked ass with it at Meat Stock. Good for him and Jai, and obviously Dan kicked ass at Houston with Sterling and everything. I think you'll see more of him. I mean, it's the old set and forget. I mean, it's
not the same stigma in America, and I think if you're a team who's trying to to take one element out of an already difficult dance that you're trying to do kind of makes sense to me. You know, the more stable you can make one thing, and then the better off it means you can focus more on your proteins.
Yeah, I reckon Tom Jackson's probably one of the big reasons why pellets have become
Yeah.
acceptable and not I always call them microwaves because they're like set and forget, right?
Right.
Which is what they
That's
are,
what we call them too.
and good to go and whatever. Cook on whatever you want. I don't really care.
Yeah.
Tom Jackson, Chef Tom, he's done a huge amount of work on the Y640 or whatever it's called.
Yep.
And sort of like really showcased the pellet grill, even though he's not a comp guy, but just showed the reliability and versatility of it. And then you've obviously got the GMG crew in America that just thrash the arse off everything. I mean, I don't know how much they get paid, but I fucking hope it's a lot for how much promotion those guys do. But, Diva Q, you've got Diva Q on the, what do they call the other one? Traeger.
Yeah.
And then you've got Christina and Sterling and so on GMG, and just going on and on about it all the time. And they're just, I mean, they are very, what's the word, vocal about cooking on the GMG.
Yeah.
And maybe they get paid every time they say the word GMG is what I figure. But anyway, they use it, and Sterling's been a great competitor and shown what the and to some extent our team's cooking the exact same way that Sterling is, albeit we're using heat beads lump through a gravity fed offset. He's using whatever pellets through a pellet grill, but it's still set and forget. We're cooking the same way, and then we've got the drum for hot and fast. So I mean, you could say we are cooking on a pellet grill type appliance.
Right. I mean, as you're cooking clean, you're taking on, it's like some people cook so clean that in America they deliberately have to dirty up their cook, for it to take on some smoke and some flavor. And it kind of goes in swings and roundabouts. So it gets to a point where you are cooking so clean, it's less about the wood or the heat source that you're cooking from, and more about the other things. And you kind of do get to that. You kind of do get to that point. There have been times where we've forgotten to even add fruit wood into our cook, and we've still done just as well.
It makes you realise, there's a lot of BS in barbecue, eh? Like,
so much.
I add some Jack Daniels to my spritz, and that's my secret. Or
I know.
I use 2 lumps of cherry and 1 a pecan, and
I know.
every hour, and it's just like that stuff. A lot of that stuff makes no difference.
No, I think it's more about what you're used to, and it's more about, everyone has their little, like even Tuffy, he has, he'll take something along and go, this is my good luck charm.
Yeah.
And until it's not a good luck charm anymore, and he'll move on to another good luck charm. And so
I
think
she has a collection of good luck charms that have worn out their luck, and then they get retired, and then the next one comes.
And I think it's the same. It's the same with other things. It's like, okay, well, I'm used to. I think this does something different. Therefore, that's what I always do. So that's what I'm always going to do. But the sooner you can kind of drop some of those biases that you have, and you kind of branch out and do different things. There have been, I think we were a team that. Because especially that first season that I came, we're very much about, no, let's play it by the book. Let's do it how we said we were going to do it for the full season. But now we're kind of not to go, when we're not so close-minded to go, maybe we should try a different rub or a different sauce, or, maybe we should mix it up a little bit. And that comes with confidence as well. But, or I saw this technique, I thought we should incorporate it into our cook, and you start kind of layering and progressing things as you go.
Yeah, well, I've learned a huge amount off you guys and many other teams. So I don't want to make it sound like it's just you guys, but definitely learn. I mean, I'm a big believer that if you're going to learn something, you have to learn it from someone who's better than you.
Yeah, 100%.
Like, it's no point me going and talking barbecue with the 118th best team in the world, when I can go to the 117th best and get them to teach me something. You can only learn. I mean, yes, you can learn from anyone, but you really need to learn from people better than you, like from people who have accomplished what you're trying to accomplish, right? And there's no point talking to the team that constantly comes in the top 10, in the bottom 10%. If you're trying to get into the top 10%, you've got to go to the
And I think so. I think you got to be careful with that too, because like some people can send you on a wild goose chase.
For
You know,
sure.
if their intentions aren't good, or if they want to make it more complicated than it needs to be. I think we're really lucky in this day and age because we've got obviously YouTube and the internet, and a lot of things are coming out in terms of how to cook in competition. And probably in the last 3 years, we've seen a lot of that. So YouTube's definitely a great source for someone who's starting. But I'd probably say, if anyone's starting out and they really want to understand how they get into competition barbecue, a lot of the competition your classes that they do, especially when and there's a lot of classes that would happen no doubt in New Zealand as they do in Australia, and there's some local ones that are really great that they can share that their knowledge that they've picked up from a whole abundant different places. But we also get celebrities that come out and do these kind of things as well, American cooks. I think just everyone should take advantage of when those classes come up, and I think that's where a majority of people kind of learn, because most people are learn by doing, and they want to see it and they want to be able to ask the questions in the moment. And that's where YouTube, you kind of don't really have the ability to have that back and forth motion, whereas classes allow you to do that. And so that's where I think those classes really come in handy.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and echo that because I've learnt heaps at classes. I've done Sterling's class, I've done Mo's, Tuffy's, I've done Brad and Tim's, and just learnt a huge amount of techniques. And I mean, the reason I'm cooking hot and fast right now is because I've done Tim and Brad's class at the Q Club. And
I mean,
that's what convinced me. I mean, when you go to a class and you're like, okay, we're going to start trimming up for the comp, and then you do a whole comp cook during the class, that blew my mind, right?
Yeah.
But they started with trimming at the class, cooked everything, and then we ate it in the class. Right. And I just thought the ability to do that, that's crazy. Like
I mean,
the ability to actually do a whole comp cook in 6 hours. It's crazy.
Right. Yeah. I mean, they're probably out of all, because I've done all those as well. I've done all of those classes, and probably out of all of the classes I've done, theirs was the one that blew my mind the most.
Yeah.
We've got a huge emphasis on aesthetics here in Australia and how pretty the box looks. And they're like, no, we don't like, it's all about getting the best flavor, and aesthetics kind of come second. And so they put less importance into what it looks like and more importance into what it tastes like.
I've always wondered, James, if you could actually, if you actually, they say you eat with your eyes. Well, if you make something look like it's $1 million, there's an expectation that it tastes $1 million. Whereas and Adam Roberts is a big advocate, is if you make it look like it's worth $5 and it tastes like it's worth $100, then all of a sudden you're like, wow, this is so good.
Yeah.
So much better than it looked,
You can get caught up in that. I think that's caught us out a few times, especially with ribs, where you go, yeah, but this, and Jai's a massive advocate of this, but he'll go, Justin and I are probably more concerned about aesthetics, and we were ones who kind of put the boxes together and make everything kind of look pretty. And we're like, oh, but these ribs are going to present so much better in the box. And it's like, yeah, but these ones are eating heaps better and they're banging. We've got to put in the ribs that aren't as pretty as the other ones. And we've won competitions because in that split moment, we decided to go with a more ugly looking set of ribs as opposed to the more pretty ones. But I think, and we've also lost plenty where we've put in the more pretty ones as well. So you definitely can get caught up in that. I think it just depends kind of what angle you're coming from and where your leaning kind of sits.
Yeah, and I think the bigger difference, like people like ask, why do you cook 3 racks of ribs all the same?
Yeah.
And we're like, well, because the texture varies, whereas the look and the rubs and everything don't. You're never going to get the same 2 pieces of meat in one box or in one pit.
Yeah,
I mean, so having a variety of textures to try, you're going to find one that's better than another.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that just comes down to the meat, number one, but also too, sometimes with ribs, you're not always going to get them exactly the same size. So you might, and not deliberately, you kind of want to make them the same size if you can, but inevitably sometimes there's a smaller one or a larger one than another. And sometimes if you haven't cooked them for long enough, the smaller set eat the best. And sometimes if you've shot over, then it might be the larger set of ribs that are just eating the best on the day.
Yeah, there's so many variables, bro. It's just ridiculous,
Yeah.
So what's in your future in terms of obviously you're I assume you're going to continue to cook with the Smokeface Grillahs.
Continue to cook, yeah. We're
And have you got any immediate plans for any new barbecues or anything, any new comps that you guys are looking at? I mean, you look at going back to the Royal, or
we would love to. There's so many unknown factors this year. It's really difficult. I kind of wonder what this year is going to look like for competition barbecue. My personal thoughts is that we should just all call it a day and just restart next season. But there's this huge appetite to want to get back into it, and obviously so. But it's really hard to kind of call because half the season's gone. There's only so many months left in the year. There's this unknown factor, especially in Victoria, about how long this is going to continue on for. So it's kind of where do you pick it up again? The Royal is obviously
it's been canned for this year, is it? No.
Has it? I know.
No, the Jack has, and Memphis and May has. They bumped it to September, then they canned it.
Right.
The Jack's been canned.
Yeah.
But there was talk that the Royal's still going ahead. But I mean, I can't even get back into my country if I go over to it.
Well, yeah, that's right. So I think, at the moment they're allowing people to put down payment on the Royal. So I think as of this very moment, it's still open for the most part. And of course, people don't want to lose their spot as well because you've got to be invited and get that entry, and then you've got to keep your spot. So we would love to. I'm not sure I don't think collectively as a team we've all agreed to go as of yet. So if it does happen and we're going, it may not be all of us, or it might be. We're not sure.
Well, we qualified to cook at the Royal this year, and because we won Barbecue Mania, and that gave us an entry. But me and Jai were going to actually go and do it. I hadn't told you that yet, but I think it's just, I'm not going over there when I've got to wait 2 weeks to come back in. It's like,
no.
Stuff there.
Yeah, so I think we're just trying to kind of think about how we can keep barbecue alive, how we can keep it interesting, and what opportunities present themselves as a result of all of this happening.
I mean, what about just a boomerang barbecue versus what's Brad's team's name? Getting basted. They did the one team versus one team with Zoom streaming.
Yeah.
I mean, that would be cool to just go head to head. I mean, obviously you can maybe open it up to 4 teams or something, but
yeah,
and that's pretty cool. I thought it might not be that sustainable from a judging point of view. But,
there's obviously an element that you take out of it, but it's really hard to know what's going to happen in Australia. I think we're probably more looking inwardly about what we can do as a team and what opportunities present themselves this year, and how we can keep barbecue alive and people interested, and also what we can do as a team in terms of progress our brand and who we are and what opportunities we have. Whilst there isn't a huge focus on competition barbecue, then what does that mean for Smokeface Grillahs and what can we do? So we're, without going, I guess, too much into it, we're looking at a number of different opportunities right now, which we're really excited about. And some of them I'm sure will get up and some of them may not. But and then we kind of, I think in my head anyway, I think I'm not sure how much of the season is left this season. But whilst I think we're also enjoying, we obviously miss the competition scene and we miss seeing each other and the camaraderie that comes with it. But at the same time, we're kind of having fun cooking a whole bunch of other things at home, and we got into some Mexican recently, and that was
saw that.
Yeah, it just heaps fun to do something completely different, and of course, being in Texas, they have the real Tex-Mex type thing going on, and I just had that influence and had to get that out of my. Had to get that happening. It brought it all back. It didn't feel like a chore. Whereas as you said, if you're cooking something that you've always cooked at competition like brisket or all the regular stuff, it kind of the fun's out of it. But part of the fun is the creative aspect.
I mean, we've just had SCA start in New Zealand. Like we've got our own accreditation, so we can run our own SCA comps. So I expect to see a whole lot more SCA competitions and opportunities in New Zealand. And I actually wonder what kind of influence. Like, are we going to end up with teams just wanting to do SCA? It's feasible.
Probably
it could just be SCA teams, but
Yeah, probably.
Everyone's guess.
I think initially that was the way it kind of happened in Australia is so SEA is heaps fun. Like it's so much fun. It gives you creative license. There's a lot of rules, but then there's also a lot of things that you can, a lot of creative license to do a whole bunch of different things. And I think it just gave all of the teams something to do the day before. And these things go in peaks and troughs, but SEA is still alive more than ever. And Victoria, in particular, there's a few teams that do really well around SEA, and some people just taking it to the next level. And so SEA is definitely a heap of fun. And I think over the last 12 months, we've seen a lot of teams. There have been just some SEA teams, or someone might have a site, they're not doing SEA, and then another team piggybacks off their site and says, hey, we want to do SEA, but we don't want to do the main comp. Do you mind if we use your space for just SEA? So we're seeing a lot of that in the last 6 to 12 months.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. And I mean, do you guys always do SEA, or have you guys? I know you've done some SEA, but are you guys usually doing it if it's available?
We used to. I think when it kind of first came out in Australia, we did SEA because we just really enjoyed it, and we did it for a good 12 months. Us as a team, there was a crossroad where we went, okay, are we going to give? We're there. What are we here for? And are we going to give the main focus on the actual cook itself, or are we going to spread our focus across two different cooks? Because kind of what we were finding is that by doing SEA, and we're probably not the most organized team. We are in some sense.
I can attest to that.
Yeah. So, and of course, all four of us rather, are really, really busy. So it means that when we come to competition, there's a lot of trimming that needs to be done. There's a lot of things that need to happen. Whereas a lot of teams will already come cryovac, sealed, ready to go, and there's really not a hell of a lot to do. But just the way that we genetically are made up, it means that if we do an SEA cook, that kind of eats away into some of our trimming time and our prep time, which means that we're really pushed to get where we want to be, and then also enjoy the competition itself and see our friends and have that social aspect that we really enjoy. So we kind of made a conscious decision that as much as we enjoyed SEA, that it wasn't going to be part of our routine anymore. And we've done Justin really enjoys cooking steak, and he's still continued on a few SEA cooks on his own, just under JG Barbecue. But for the most part, I think we just really focus more on the main cook.
Cool. Well, James, it's been a blast talking to you, and I've been wanting to talk to you for ages because I just enjoy your company. But
yeah, you too.
Is there any sponsors you'd like to give us mention to and tell us why you like their products? Or
yeah, I mean, we've got quite a few sponsors. Obviously, Heat Beads is probably one of our main sponsors, and they're with us. They've been with us for 2 years already, and with us again this year. We obviously really love their product, and it goes across multiple. We use the Heat Bead Blue in the Myron and the charcoal.
Look, I mean, I've got to say that really opened my eyes because I'd never tried the blues until I cooked with you guys, and then now I use the blues. So.
Love the blues.
We tend to go through a lot of charcoal because we run that in the gravity fed. But if I cook on my Finetto or whatever, it's always the blues going in there. So
yeah, the blues. So, and then of course the charcoal goes in the gateways. Obviously we've got Cav and the boys down at the Q Club, which none of it would be possible unless we had them.
They're really the ultimate sponsor, isn't it?
They're just the mecca of barbecue in Melbourne. If you haven't come to Melbourne and not gone there, then you're crazy, So they're such a great, they're not only great people, but their knowledge there's so much there, and there's they're just both Pam and Cav Cav are such great people. They're absolute legends.
I actually, when I set up Texas Pete's Barbecue, my restaurant brand, I wasn't sure how we were going to fit out the inside, and I walked into the Q Club and like, we've got to do that, and we've got to do this, and it's just such a cool concept. And to take, it was a bit of a risky thing to do, but they killed it. And I mean, have they moved yet?
They moved, yeah.
Yeah, and how's that looking?
Really good. It's amazing. I mean, they've got a range of different products that they're kind of going more. They still want to be definitely in barbecue, but I think their menu has evolved somewhat, and it's not just, they're not pigeonhole themselves just into American barbecue anymore. They're branching out to a range of different types of barbecue, which is really exciting.
Yeah, that's cool. That's the trend right there.
Yeah, and just opening it up, which is great. And but then of course they've lost some floor space when it comes to, when it comes to presenting products, but they've kind of gone upwards. So now there's like
Hold on. So, I mean, at the old, are they still at the old one as well?
no, they
No.
moved.
Okay, so the
Yeah,
old one, it was probably about 20% bar,
yeah,
40% kitchen, and 60% barbecues and rubs.
yeah.
Is that still the same ratio that they've kept at the new joint?
Yeah, ratio is still the same, so it's still got that feeling and that heart of Q Club, but overall it's probably about halved in size.
Okay.
But they've
Well, I
got
mean, they had such a big place before too.
yeah,
That was like, you really had to have, I don't know, 60, 100 people in there to really get it full.
right,
And it's way more economical to run a smaller footprint and
yeah, for sure. And
overfill it than it is to run a big footprint and underfill.
yeah, well, they're in Lygon Street, and so they've got a great location, and they've obviously had to have got a storage facility where they store everything, so they have backup elsewhere.
So
So
they
that's how they.
don't like the old one. They had that place out the back where it was just loaded to the hilt with rubs and everything. So that
That's
and their floor space tended to hold a bit of stock as well.
right.
So they've gotten rid of all that stock, have they?
Yeah, they don't have that anymore. So a lot of it is kept in the warehouse.
Yeah,
So
right.
they still have presence in terms of the product,
Yeah.
but just they're not
They
holding.
don't have 10 gateways. They've got one and
Yeah,
9 at
so
the warehouse.
yeah, so they're holding something. Can someone orders it? They can have it there. They can go to the warehouse and someone purchase it. Have a beer at the bar, and I'll go to the warehouse and get it, and I'll call you back in 15 minutes, and we'll have your Traeger up and running, ready to go.
Yeah,
So
nice.
so yeah, that's really good. Obviously, Kelly's has been with us. Kelly's Meats from the start. They've been with us from the very beginning, and you can't do any of this unless you've got a great product to begin with. And his Luke's very innovative in terms of barbecue, and is always staying ahead of the curve. And they do all the great low and slow meats in Melbourne. Suckle
Yeah,
Busters.
you're really, just on that note, you're really spoiled in Melbourne. I know there's a bit
Yeah.
of who's the best pissing contest down there with butchers, but
Mm-hmm.
to have both Glen and Cha 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 in the same town as Kelly's Meats is just,
Yeah.
you're spoilt for choice, and you guys are a certain quantity of expletives just for not just going, man, we're spoiled. And it's a
Yeah.
little bit like us with ribs. We've got 3 or 4 great rib products,
Yeah.
and then we become little bitches about which one's the best, instead of just going, man, they're awesome,
I mean,
I'd take any of them.
your worst Canadian ribs will beat our best Aussie ribs any day, and that's how it is. But I think we're very blessed to have such a good meat provider. So
Yeah,
Kelly's
I mean,
Meats.
I got to shout out to Kelly's Meats because he was through you guys and talking to him at the Royal, put us onto the Shure briskets, and those are
Yeah.
just, those are something special.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, Shore's another one of our sponsors, and they're just so uber consistent, and their flavor is amazing. And of course, a lot of people, when we used to as well, we were a big advocate of the blues, which is a high marble score and a pure blood, and we cook more with the Sure blacks. Which we just find that media flavor does really well, and it's less rich and more sort of beefy. So we cook with the blacks. So sure, you haven't tried a Sure, you haven't really tried
I
brisket. So
mean, I've tried some of. I've been lucky where I've tried some of the best in the world,
yeah,
and frick, it's right up there.
it's right up there. Yeah, definitely. And then of course Sucklebusters, rubs and sauces, and they've been with us from the beginning. And
Well, that was unplanned, but I just happened to.
there you go.
I mean, I'm
And
not sponsored by Sucklebusters or anything
no,
like that, but I bumped into Dan at the Houston. He's from Texas. Bumped into him at Houston, and he gave me a
yeah,
shirt, and I wear that thing with pride. And I think he's got a
yeah.
good product. So, shout out
He's
to Dan Arnold and
Dan
Sucklebusters.
Arnold.
Yeah.
Yeah, Dan Arnold's amazing. He's in Texas, of course, and such a humble guy, and their products. It's the number one rub in America, and they sell really really well. And to see how they operate, and they're really a family business. I think there's this perception that a lot of these American-based companies are massive, and whilst they push a lot of product, he's very grassroots in terms of family, and that's really important to him. But their rubs are off the charts. Their SPGs out of control.
Yeah. I mean, they're. If I was to pick, if I could only use one rub company,
Yeah,
and we don't use Sucklebusters in extensively in our compositions. But if I was to just choose one company, Sucklebusters would be it, because they've just got such a good range. Sauces, rubs,
Yeah.
great flavors, good range.
Yep.
I use some lanes too. Ryan does a good product as well.
Yeah.
But Sucklebusters really have just, and actually one thing I like about Lane's rubs is they've branched out into the dessert rubs and all that, and that's really cool. And I think they've just got some great companies. But shout out to Dan Sucklebusters, thanks for the shirt, and glad that I was wearing it today that you mentioned it. So that's cool.
Yeah, so I think they've, and they cross all of the proteins really nicely as well. They have some some great pork rubs, pecan, and their pork rubs really good as well. And yeah, we use all their rubs on everything. So and Dan's, before even competition barbecue was really a big thing here in Australia, he was on board with the team even before myself. So he supported us from the very beginning. So that kind of loyalty, is very rare nowadays. But yeah, Dan's such a nice guy. And yeah, I think they're the kind of
now you got knives too, don't you? Because shout out to old Nine Fingers Forge. I mean, I've been following him on Instagram, and he's frigging. I love it.
I mean, James Taylor, he's great. So anyone who's had the pleasure of meeting James, he's such a nice guy, but his knife skills are amazing. And we were one of the first teams to kind of trial out some of his knives. And we took them over to America with pride, and even the guys in America were just absolutely amazed by the quality.
I'm a bit of a knife aficionado, as are all barbecuers, but and I own, I don't know, $2,000 or $3,000 worth of knives.
Yeah.
And I don't own any of his products currently. In fact, I was supposed to pick up my boning knife at Melbourne Meat Stock, but just with everything happening with COVID. But anyway, his knife is like nothing you've ever seen, guys. The boning knife. I mean, he does some of the bigger slices in that, which I'm not as in love with.
Yeah.
He does this funny looking handled boning knife, and it's like cutting meat with a feather that's like a laser beam.
Yeah, I know.
And
it's
it
insane.
just stays sharp.
Yeah.
It holds its edge amazingly. It presents beautifully, and it's just like a feather in your fingers. And so I'm not paid to say any of that. And James, maybe you should pay me, James. No, but I got no association with him other than that I've met him at barbecue comps, and he's a great guy and everything.
Yeah.
But that's my honest opinion: is it has to be the most elegant boning knife that I've ever put in these here saucy hands. So
yeah, I mean, and you pay for quality, and you pay for the craftsmanship and the beautiful resin handle, and they look pretty as well. But you're right.
I think they're Damascus as well. Or,
yeah,
they might be. Anyway, frick, they're badass. So check them out, Nine Fingers Forge.
Nine Fingers Forge.
I mean, I got introduced to them through you guys. So you guys, you're doing your job as a promoter of his products, and one of our buddies, Chet Gentry, who uses that over in America, is the envy of all of Texas with that boning knife of his. So
yeah, we could hardly get them out of other people's hands to use them on the day. That's how people were just like, oh man, this product, and so it speaks for itself. I don't have to talk up his product, but they sell.
It does, and they're pretty well priced, to be honest, for what you're getting. Like this guy's hand making these things in like his own workshop. He's not like just ordering them off the internet and putting his name on them or anything. So
no,
he's killing it. So shout out to James Taylor. And now he's with the Butterbeard Barbecue. Yeah.
So obviously was in the team with the Beard and the Barbecue with Tony, and he hung up his boots, and obviously they continued on as another team.
And doing pretty well, to be honest.
They
cooked at the Royal, did well, and like to see more of them in the future. Anyway, so that about wraps it up, unless you've got anything else that you'd like to finish up with, James.
No, thanks for having me on. And really, we us Aussie guys love the New Zealand scene, and we're really keen to get back over there and spend more time. And everyone there was just was so nice and so pleasant. We just can't wait back to see all the friends that we made over the years through New Zealand. And I'm sure, hopefully, if you don't see us this season, which is unlikely, you might at least see one of us this season, then we'll definitely see you guys next season sooner rather than later.
Well, I'm definitely fixing to I got you got a target on your head from me. I'm just like,
Bring it. Bring
here's the
it.
thing: is I think so highly of your team and you
Mm.
guys, and love you guys so much and everything.
Yeah.
But think so highly of you guys that like it is the goal to beat you guys, because I mean, when you play against
Yeah.
other teams, you want to beat the best team. So
For sure.
I think massively high of you guys. I've gotten we've to and froed with Trev. I mean, we
Yeah.
seem to be able to beat him at QMU, but that's about it. And but he's an exceptionally good cook. But just more cooking against you guys would just be awesome,
Yeah.
and cooking with you. So
Yeah.
thanks for your time tonight, and for those listening, I hope you've enjoyed with James. Now, how can they follow you? Do you have your own private handle on Instagram that people, if they
Uh,
want to DM you or anything like that?
yeah. So obviously our team has one. We're on Instagram and Facebook, just at Smokeface Grillahs. But if you want to follow me direct, then I've got my own, which is Big Bear Barbecue, and that was just something I put together before I even started with the team, and just for a bit of fun. And that's obviously why I probably lean more towards our own team at Smokeface Grillahs. But
Is Big Bear is that on Insta or is that on Facebook or
on
both? Or?
on both I'm probably
Yeah, cool.
more. Yeah, probably more on Insta, but
So, do you post up your personal cooks on Big Bear or on Smokeface?
yeah, on I both. I think it just depends. I think if I'm doing more kind of home cook style and something that's a bit more relaxed, I probably put it on my own personal page. Whereas if I'm doing something that I think that's going to generate a lot of interest, or is more competition sort of style, then I'll tend to put it on Smokeface Grillahs. Probably a fair bit of my energy is going towards the Smokeface Grillahs page at the moment.
Right. Well, probably the best way to get a hold of you is to message him on
Yep.
Smokeface Grillahs. And get yourself some of their sweet merch. They've got some really. I mean, the beanie's getting a thrashing right now at my house. I couldn't find it actually. I think I might have put it in the wash, but
No.
it's. I think you guys are one of the only teams that do a beanie with the pom pom, and
Yeah.
I love that thing and wear that thing with pride. But nice talking to you tonight, James. So we'll
Yeah.
we'll
Too.
end up there, and we'll finish the recording. And if you could give us a like and a follow or not, that's up to you. But we'd like it if you did. And we'll see you in the next episode.